Okay, hey, what's up, you guys? The ASP.NET Core documentation has the following tutorial. You build a project called Contoso University. That's what it looks like. I've got the project loaded up here in Visual Studio, and here it is running in a browser. So yeah, there it is. Okay, so what I wanted to show in this is with ASP.NET Core Razor Pages, and also applies to views and MVC as well. Um, so much is what is called stringly typed. Instead of being statically typed, references are made to different parts of the page or parts of the website, and basically using strings that are not statically checked at compile time. So it's basically, any kind of typo can cause the program to not operate as you would expect. So I'll give you an example here. Here we're looking at the index, the student's index page. And what I will do is maybe put these side by side. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, let me move this over a little bit. We have enough room to view the. All right, so this is the Razor page, right, for the student's index. So let's start up at the top and look at this create new link, which is right here. Basically, we're referencing the page that it's supposed to hit here in a string called create. So while right now it works, if I click it, we get taken there. If I come over here and type in just some text and save it, and we reload, now if I go to click on create new, it doesn't go anywhere. So that's a broken thing, a broken link. So not a broken link, but it just doesn't go to where we intended it to go. So that's an example of what I mean by stringly typed. Ideally, the system would give us an error at compile time and say, hey, you're trying to reference a page that didn't exist. In that case, I typed in ABC or create ABC, and there's no page for that. So it'd be nice if the system told us about that. There's other examples all throughout, even just this one page. Just to cover a couple more, this part of, oh, and I need to point out something. I'm using OBS to record this, and it doesn't always pick up the mouse. So like here on the browser, you can see the mouse sometimes, and in Visual Studio you can't, but it looks like if I highlight a line, then you can see the mouse. So anyways, kind of a weird issue. Okay, so here on the index page, we've got this. Oh, I just wanted to say I will try to highlight things, like select them if I need to talk about something, just in case the mouse doesn't show up, or if it looks like it's not showing up. So yeah, so on this form, this is this find by name thing. This is a form, and that's generated here. So right, this ASP page, the way I showed up here, that's stringly typed. Same thing here. Typo there will cause a problem. Moreover, we have this field here, and it's being set up here with the input. Okay, let me select the line so you can see the mouse. So this input tag, we have a name of search string. So basically, that's the parameter that the is going to be, or it's the name of the parameter, I guess you could say, search string. So that is also stringly typed. I mean, you could put a typo in there, and it will not, well, it won't go to the right parameter. Let me show you where that goes in the, let's see here. So we're looking at the index, the student's index. Let's go to the page model. And if we look at, let me see here. Okay, on get async, this is the method that's going to run, that's associated with, well, the index, student's index page. And here we see the search string parameter. And so that's what this is trying to match onto. So yeah, if you, like I said, put a typo in there, it's no longer going to work. I mean, let's just try it. Let's do AL. We search for AL. Having a couple of example names in there. Let's just search for B, actually, something fewer names. Yeah, search for B, we get one, right? One return item. So now let's come back here and again put in ABC, so it's going to go to a non-existent parameter. And let's go back to students just to reset the page. Now search for B, and as you can see, it doesn't work. So again, simple typo in here causes the application to break. Again, in theory, you know, the parameter is known here. I mean, or semantically, we're saying, hey, I want to hit this page and this parameter. So ideally, we would get type checking, but of course, that doesn't exist. So that's another example of that. Okay, here's another example of ASP page, right? So an issue in there, typo in there can cause an issue. And we just see these throughout the entire program. You know, ASP page. Okay, here's one I haven't mentioned yet. ASP route. A typo in here can cause an issue because these are actually just free form. You type ASP-route- whatever the name of the parameter, and then some value you want to provide. So these are not checked either. So there's two more examples of that. Here's another. Actually, in this entire anchor, there's 3 examples of areas where typos can affect it. So yeah, I mean, right here we've got some more. I'm just going through and showing you all the different places where this kind of an issue can come up. Okay, so what can we do about it? Well, with ASP.NET Core, you know, it originally provided MVC, and you had the Razor views, or views written in a Razor syntax. And here we're looking at this tutorial that I showed you. The page for the tutorial there is it's demonstrating Razor pages, and in Razor pages, again, your views are described in Razor syntax. That's what I've been showing you here. So I've been messing around with something that I guess I'm calling, instead of Razor pages, I'm calling it object pages, because the page is represented semantically, you could think of as an object. Technically, I'm representing them using static classes. So it's technically not correct to say that these are objects, but I'm just going to call it object just because it's semantically it is something, and we're going to call methods on these things, or methods on the static classes. So I'll show you that right now. Let's actually compare side by side. Within the same project, I have, so here the pages folder, that's all the Razor pages stuff, and just to differentiate it, I just made a folder called components. And while there are a bunch of different entities that are tracked, right, as part of the tutorial, courses, departments, instructors, I've converted the students pages over to this style that like I say, I'm calling object pages. So if we go under students, here are all the corresponding ones. So let's pull up, let's compare the Razor page, the Razor syntax to what I'm doing in the object page for index. So I'm going to open that up here. I'm going to move it over side by side, and I will bring in give me 1 second. I'll bring in the demo application as we need it. Okay, so let me see here. So on the left we've got the Razor page, and on the right we've got the object page. So let's go through. Let me scroll down to where the view is being generated. Yeah, let's start here. So the first thing I want to point out is the following. All right, so just to show, right, this is the page that's being rendered, and actually let me, yeah, okay, we've reset the view there. So this is the markup that's used to generate this page, and this is basically everything on screen right here from here to here. This is what's used to generate this page. So as you can see, in the object page, it all fits on one screen, so much more concise than this one. And I'll show you a couple of ways that I get that concision. Well, just for starters, you can see that the HTML is being generated with these h dot items, right? So h.h2, this is generating the, let's see where, okay, so this part right here corresponds to this right here, right? So to generate the h2 tag, we just use h.h2. Now, so where is this coming from? This is coming from a library called Hyperlinq. It's on NuGet. It's very nice. It's actually been out for a few years, but it works just fine in ASP.NET Core. So that's what I'm using for that. And yeah, you're going to get some concision just from that, because in HTML-like markup, most tags are most tags you're repeating the tag name, right? So this paragraph tag, right? You have P and then the closing P. Whereas over here, you just h.p and then the body. So you're saving a little bit of space with that. But because of the fact that it's in C#, well, this is a more significant aspect of achieving concision is since it's in C#, you can easily abstract things out. So I'm going to scroll down here and show, okay, just to show on the demo application, you've got the previous and the next page, and over the Razor page, these two items are what are generating the previous and the next pages, right? You got previous and next. And you can see that they're very similar, and so it'd be nice to abstract those out. Well, that's exactly what I've done here. You can see the previous button and the next button are being generated here. So I've abstracted that out into a local function called PageButton. So that's one of the benefits, again, of expressing your view directly in C# instead of in Razor syntax. So let's see. Before I get into like the implementation of PageButton, I'm going to keep showing some items here in the view code. Let's scroll up and talk about some of these places that, like I said before, were stringly typed and how I'm doing it now. So just for reference, okay, let's talk about the create new link. That is right here. We're just saying go to the create form basically. Again, and this is stringly typed. So what are we doing over here? Well, this is the equivalent line. Over here in the Solution Explorer, you can see I've got different files for the different so-called pages, and I have a page, of course, for create. That's the okay. If we come over here, we click on create new, we're going to get the create form. This is the create page, right? So I have an object page, I guess, like I said, for create, and that's right here, and we'll dive into that one in a second. But this is the important part. When I want to link to that create page, object page, I don't put in a string URL. I say components.students.create. So now I'm referencing that so-called object, and then there's an anchor method on that. So it's basically saying generate an anchor tag for this page, and then I provide the text create new. So there we go. There's your strongly typed reference. You know, I'm not using a string. I'm calling a method, and that method is going to take care of generating it. In fact, on here on the anchor, now I will show you. I'll do F12 to jump to it, and we can see the method here is quite simple. Here it's calling out the hyperlink to generate the anchor code. I'm sorry, the anchor tag code, and I'm calling another method which is defined here, which gives us the actual URL. And you can see here it's /student/create alt because the official demo application is using /create. But so that I can test things out, let me go here. So here, if I hit create, it's going to go to the object pages version of the page, and you can see here that's reflected here in the name of the URL. So create_alt. So that's what that's about right there. So okay, so let's continue on. But this gives you a general feel for how I'm now referencing pages instead of referencing them through strings. I'm referencing the actual object page and then calling a method on it based on what kind of thing that I want. So let's see. All right, next, what I want to show you next. Let's go back to, okay, so back in the demo application, let's talk about the form, which is right here. Over on the, let me see here. So on the Razor Pages side, here's the form code for that. And how is that being generated here? Well, I'm calling this form method. The form method is taking care of generating the initial form code. And let me see. You know what? Actually, I want to change that. Let me see here. Okay, actually, no, I don't need to change that. What's going on here is when the user submits the form, I'll just do that again. I'll type B. Okay. Basically, the form is submitting to the same page, and it's just using a GET request. As you can see here, we searched for B, and so now the URL, we can see the search string parameter set to B. So to generate the form code for that, we're actually using this form method, and it's a method within the current object page, which is defined there, and it's also very straightforward. It's just specifying the method, which is get, and then it's using our reference method to get a hold of the URL. Let me come back to where we were. Control minus a couple times. Okay. So that's the form method you're seeing there. Then let me see. Let me come in here. All right. So on the Razor Pages side, we do have a div, and so that I'm just specifying manually. That's right here. Then we have a paragraph tag, and then that's the same. Now, okay. Now inside the paragraph tag, right here, let's look at the equivalent stuff there. So find by name. Okay, that's just a string. That's the same. This is the first one that gets interesting. On the Razor Pages side, we say, we want an input tag, we specify the type, and then we're, again, stringly typed here, we're specifying a parameter called search string, and then some value we want to provide. On object pages, here's the line that corresponds to that. Let me see. Yeah, I'm going to highlight that one. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're saying for the current page, we want the parameters. We want the search string parameter. So immediately that's statically typed. We're not going to get any typo issues there. And then for that parameter, we're saying, give me a text input. So this method right here, text input, is taking care of generating the input input text markup. And then finally, the value we're passing in as current filter. So to me, that makes more sense. Semantically, we're saying for this parameter, give me some input. And again, it's going to take care of generating the code. If we click on text input and jump to it, F12, you can see it's very straightforward. It's just using, again, hyperlinq to generate an input tag. And then we're inside a parameter object. So of course, we know the name of the parameter. So that's how we're specifying the name attribute. And then the value, of course, comes from an argument. So I'm going to jump back. Okay, so for this line on the Razor Pages, this is for generating the, I'll bring the window over again, this, the search button here. This is actually, this expression here is kind of used in a few different spots in the project. So I just factored that out into something called SubmitButton, and I put it just for now under a class called widgets. And so just put in the text for the button search, and it generates that. So something just a little bit of a nicety there. But again, it's I'm able to do that because everything is in C#. So again, factoring things out is very straightforward. And finally, okay, over here we have this link back to full list, and this is just basically going back to the student's index, right? So instead of that, I'm calling the anchor method, right? So anchor method for the current object page. So I'm not qualifying it, and I'm just saying text back to full list, and that takes care of generating the anchor text. Okay, let's move on to the table. Let's see here. Okay, so the first thing I'll point out is the table code on the Razor Pages side is, it's all of that. The table code on the object pages side is this right here. So let's go through a couple of these. The table header. So that right there is basically this one line here. So over here we're generating an anchor tag, right? Here, in order to do that, I'm calling the anchor method for the current page, and then I'm passing in the parameters. So this is a method. So all of this is going to be, of course, it's all statically typed. It's not going to be vulnerable to any of those typos. Continuing on, let's see. Here's a similar one for the enrollment date. What else? Oh, okay, and so you can see here, I don't have that whole anchor tag thing for first name, because if you look at the form or the table, we can sort by last name, we can sort by enrollment date. First name, there's no link because we're not going to sort by that. So that's why you see we're generating an anchor tag for, let's see, for last name and for enrollment date. And then finally, I will talk about the body portion of the table. Of course, using razor syntax, they're using this for each prefix with the at. So how do we? And that's to go through the list of students, right? And generate this code for each list of students is what it's doing. So here we're saying, okay, start the t-body tag, and the nice thing about Hyperlinq is if you look at the IntelliSense, yeah, hopefully that shows up for you in the video. You can see that the t-body tag, it accepts basically an arbitrary number of children, each of type object. And C# allows you to pass in an IEnumerable whenever something is expecting that arbitrary number of items. So that's what we're doing here. We're saying the list of students, and we're doing a select on it. So we're going to get an IEnumerable, and for every student, we are creating a TR. And so that kind of is the start of this. We're opening up a TR tag here. That's what this corresponds to. And then for every student, we're saying do the TD tag, right, for last name, first name, enrollment date, etc. Now, here we get to another one of these sections. Let's see, the edit, the details, and delete links. I'm going to bring in the project page again. So here you can see for every student, you get these three links: edit, details, and delete. Again, on the Razor Pages side, you've got an A tag helper. Again, all this is stringly typed. So let's look at the equivalent for the edit button. Over here is the line that corresponds to that. And you can see here, so when you click on edit for a given student, you're taken to the edit page. So we want a link to the edit page. So in object pages, the way I represent that is I say components.students.edit to reference the page. Then we call its anchor method so that we can generate a link to that. And then we just provide the ID, and boom, it gives us the right code for that. Similar for details, similar for delete. Okay, and then finally I mentioned I've got the page button, right? But a little while ago I showed you this. So like here's the code for the next button, and here's the corresponding line. Right, so let's look at the page button method. I'll just F12 on that. I have it up here. Actually, it's not a method, it's a local function. And you can see here, basically I'm just calling the anchor method for the current page, the index page. And really the only things that we're parameterizing, if we look at the next page, of course we want the text either to be next or previous, so we're going to parameterize that. And then the index itself is either, we're going to the next page if we want +1, if we want to go to the previous page, we're going to do -1. Everything else is the same. So those are the parts that we've factored out, right? So let's see. Yep, there's the increment, there's the text. I guess, let me see. Oh, okay, the other part that I have factored out over here on the Razor Pages side is when I'm setting the CSS class, like for next, we're getting this value from this computed value. And so I just inlined that over here instead of having a separate value. So that's what you see here. This has page boolean is being done there. So anyways, okay, that's just a little example of how I've factored out some code to make things a little more concise. Okay. Okay, y'all, I had to pause the video. I had to go eat something. I was really hungry. I'd been fasting all day. In case you're wondering, I had sardines with raw garlic, apple cider vinegar, 2 kinds of mustard, and avocado mashed into it. It's really good, chased by some macadamia nuts and pistachios. Okay, back to the project. I think we've worked mostly through this index page example. So let's jump to, maybe we can look at one or two more. If we go to the different pages, the different object pages, right? So we were taking a look at index. Let's do the create page. So if we're on the index page, right? I showed you a little while ago. If we do create new, we get to create form. So this is generated by. Let me bring up as well the the Razor page for create. So there's the front end to that. Yeah, that looks good. And okay, so this is here. You can see the entire Razor page on one screen, and the corresponding object page code for that is basically right here. One of the places where we're saving a lot of space is you can see these form groups. There's one here. So there's a form group for last name, first, mid name, enrollment date, right? And then there's the last one for the submit button. But these three right here, as you can see, it's kind of a repeated pattern. And so the form group generation for last name happens on this line here. So it's basically this one line expands into that. And again, just there was something else that I wanted to factor out because you can see it's kind of repeated there. And in C#, that's very straightforward to do. So that code is here in the form group. Let's see, what do I want to show there? To form group, I'm passing in. See, how do I want to talk about this? Basically, right now we're on the create object page. So I separate them out. So this is, I guess, what I would call the create page. And then after you hit the button, you go to the create post page. So I actually have that separate, and that is right here. If you look in the Solution Explorer, that's just right next to each other, create and then create post. And so this is the code that's called when the post method is called for create. Now, if we look at the form generation for that, you can see again we're not building the form manually. So we got to think about it here. So if we're on this page, when we hit when we submit the form, it's now submitting the form data to the create post page, so different object page. And you can see that reflected here. We're saying create post.form. So it's going to generate the form code that's appropriate to that page. Again, this is in a separate file. And then, let me see here. Then I'm calling this form group method, which I mentioned before. I guess I'll F12 that to jump over to it. I've got that in a file where I was messing around with a few different versions, so that's all the comments there. But pretty straightforward. It's just generating the div tag. As you can see here, we'll look at one of these like for last name. You've got the div tag, and then you have it's generating a label, text input. But what I do want to show here is that on the Razor page side, where it's explicitly calling or using the label tag to make a label for the last name, I've passed in a parameter object, and then so on that parameter object, I'm calling the label method, and that's taking care of generating the appropriate markup, right? If I do F12 on that, we can see we're inside the parameter class, and it's got a bunch of methods for given a parameter, you can generate a label, you can generate a text input, etc. I'll show you a bit of this later, but also given a parameter, if you're inside the code that's handling, let's say, a request, you might want to say, well, we've got a parameter for some value that comes from the query string, so we can say, get some value from the query string, or specifically get an int from the query string, so it'll take care of parsing that, or bool, etc. Similarly, we have methods for the form. You might have some parameter which it's coming through the form, and so you might want to get an int from the form or a string from the form, etc. So it's just a few that I've used in this project. So let's see. Let's go back to where we were. Okay, so now that we've seen the form group helper method, let's see. Yeah, I just want to show that because we're making a call to that here. And as I was showing you, form group works in terms of parameter. So the parameter for last name, how do we reference that? Well, we're submitting a form to the create post right here, object page. So in order to provide a parameter for that, we say create post.parameters, and let me scroll over, dot last name, and that's the parameter for that's appropriate to that page, right? And then we're passing in the value here, student.lastname, for the current student, or excuse me, for the student. Let's see, we're on the create object page. So here we basically it creates a new student with some default values, and that's what's going to be shown in the form there. So right, so let me just go back. If you create new, you see there's just some default values, whatever, just to give the user an example of what to put in. Okay. All right, so we were here. I think that's all I wanted to cover on the create page. Let's look at the target now. What we're calling the create post object page, and I just wanted to show some more stuff that's in terms of the parameters. If we look at the code that is now handling the request, we of course have to get the form data out, and the way I'm doing that, I kind of touched upon it before. If we look at the object page, we specify the parameters for the page right here. We got last name, first name, mid name. Each of these is a parameter object. And now in the code that is handling the request and is getting the data from the form, we say, parameters dot last name, and then we pull a string from the form, right? And we have to pass in the context. And then similar for the first mid name property and then the enrollment date. So that's how we're getting the form data. Okay. The rest of the code in the file is just the database interaction stuff. Of course, over here on the left-hand side, I've opened up the page model for the create page. In Razor Pages, it's using a dependency injection. Over here, I'm not using dependency injection, so you see a lot more code that's explicitly for like setting up a scope to bring in the database. Right here, I'm bringing in the context for the database. It doesn't necessarily have to be this way. So if you're looking at it and you're saying, hey, that looks kind of verbose, yeah, you're right. I could probably set something else up, but just for now, since I'm kind of messing around with things in a really different way from Razor Pages, I'm preferring to leave everything explicit while I sort things out. So that's why you're seeing some of this stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. It's not necessarily something that has to be set up that way. But anyways, here you can see we're adding the new student to the database, etc. So nothing strange there. Okay, I paused the video because, or the recording, I actually noticed a bug here in the create post page. After we save the student to the database, we're not doing a redirect, and it was falling through, or an explicit redirect in this branch, so it's falling through to this redirect. Now if you look, it's calling the redirect method, but this is calling the local redirect method for the current object page, which we're inside create post. So if you think about it, after we save the student, it's going to redirect to the current page. So let's see here. Okay, so we'll actually see that bug in action right now. If I go to, what we want to see is this is the Razor Pages version of the page. So if we go to create new and we put in, we'll change the name here. Create, we're redirected back to the main students index. Whereas here, I've got the object pages version of the page set up. Let me see, let me just make sure that, new version of the page. I'll change the name. If we do OK, it doesn't redirect to the index page, right? It just stays on the create form page. So I took care of that. I added in the following line. I'll just uncomment it to fix the issue. And so we want to redirect to the index page. And so that's, semantically, that's what the line is saying here. We're saying the components students index object page, we call it redirect method, and then we pass in the context. And that's pretty much it. So the idea here is that so the index page, has a redirect method, and we're saying, hey, generate or do the right thing to hit this page. We're not accessing anything through strings or anything there. So, all right, save that. And if I come back in here and let's say go back to the list, create new, we'll change the name and hit OK. And now we're taken back to the list. Okay, so yeah. All right, what else do I want to mention? Okay, I think that mostly touches upon the features that I wanted to mention. Is basically what I wanted to demonstrate was, the main thing I wanted to demonstrate was just the nice, what I consider to be nice expression in pure C# of the page description code. and the benefits of course, easy factoring, easy refactoring, and pretty much full static typing. So fully type safe instead of all the stringly typed items over here in Razor Pages. So I wanted to mention that. But of course, when you talk about this, markup style page code versus generating code from within C#, even if you have a library like Hyperlinq, there's a lot of people who really don't, they prefer the markup style code for various reasons. And that's totally fine. And so what do we do about that? So, okay, with Razor Pages and Razor syntax in general, it's more of a, I guess what I would call like a templating language. You're writing markup, and within it, you're sprinkling bits of C# expressions here and there as needed. This was an approach pioneered a long time ago. I mean, languages like PHP have been doing it forever. And Microsoft, their kind of modus operandi is whenever they're coming out with something, they'll take a look at and see what's going on in the larger ecosystem out there, and they'll say, hey, let's take the best practices. This is what people like. This is what people want, and let's offer them something along those lines. So a long time ago, when Razor syntax was created, they said, yeah, let's go the templating language route, and that's fine. It's been around for a while. It's still there. It's industrial strength, of course. It's got Microsoft's extensive efforts behind it, and it is what it is nowadays. They've taken it pretty far, but since then, another model has come out. And so, for example, if you look at a newer framework like React, they use JSX, right? So this is a page talking about JSX. Make sure I'm on the right page. Let's see. Which one do I want to show you? Yeah, we'll take a look at this page. It's just, and from the documentation, they've got an introducing JSX section here. So for those of you who don't know, for what JSX is so it looks like this. It looks like markup, but it's actually not. I guess you're not writing markup code or template code. This is it's basic in JSX. You write this, but it is and it's written inside of a JavaScript file, first of all, and it expands to JavaScript code, which then is responsible for generating the equivalent HTML. So essentially, it's just like this over here, except without that surface syntax of something that looks like markup. So for folks that do prefer more of a markup style code for code that's generating markup, I mean, conceivably you could offer that here. Something like JSX, except it would be like CSX or whatever, and so you'd have your form, what looks like the form code here, the form tags to generate the form, the table, etc. And it would look closer to this, but of course it's within C#, and so it's expanding into C# code, and so you can still get the benefits of like factoring things out. So for example, let's see, so the page button here, I defined a local method or local function for that right here. Here, instead of specifying anchor like that, maybe, well, actually I'm calling an anchor method here, so I'd have to jump over to this. And so maybe here, instead of saying h.a I would have the theoretical CSX code written in more of a markup style there, if you preferred. Again, for somebody who prefers the markup style. So I wanted to mention that. Just like I said, theoretically, it doesn't have to be this way. I personally like, and there are some people out there, believe it or not, like me, who don't mind at all writing using the Hyperlinq library to write code like this. But hey, I mean, you can you do it both ways. So yeah, the primary message that I wanted to convey here is that, look, we can have full static typing in our page views in a web framework like ASP.NET Core. We don't currently have it right in the current version of ASP.NET Core, Razor Pages, or MVC. I mean, I think partly it's because they went down the template route, and if you look at the GitHub issues, there are some out there around tag helpers saying, hey, how can we make this a little more, strongly typed or whatever. And they just sit there waiting for implementation because there's a lot of work that has to go into tightening these up to make them work in a fully statically typed way. Whereas, as you can see, I did this myself just by writing stuff directly in C#, and you're getting the full statically typed benefits. So what does the future look like? It would be nice if I don't know if Microsoft's willing to do this or if the ASP.NET Core project team is willing to do this, but I think it'd be neat if maybe someday they offered, something like this idea of object pages and then provided CSX. And that way we're more on this model that's closer to React. So instead of like a templating language, everything's actually done in C#, but it's not quite right because it's CSX. I think that would be nice because then for free, you get full static typing and you never have to mess around with tag helpers again. Hey, tag helpers are great. They were a great thing to have if you're going to go down the template route for page generation. But I think you can just sidestep that completely. And this approach with object pages, it really sticks to this principle of, hey, use one language. Don't split up the, when you have this division of languages like, Razor pages or Razor syntax and C#, or you also see it in WPF or in other UI libraries where you have XAML versus C#. This whole demonstration completely applies to XAML and C# as well. You don't need XAML. You could use this, and then again, you could have something like, CSX. I guess it would be CS XAML or something like that. So all these principles, they apply to that world as well. And in my opinion, I think it's worth exploring to say, look, do everything in C#, but use something like CSX to kind of get your comfortable markup style code. So I think that's mostly what I wanted to talk about in this video. I'm going to put a link to, so this project that I have here, the object pages version of the Contoso University project, I have it in a fork of the official tutorial repository from Microsoft. So I'll provide a link to that fork and then the particular branch that I have this code in if anybody wants to browse it. And if you look through it, look, in this video, I wanted to demonstrate, like I say, the static typing aspects of this. If you look at how I've implemented it, there's definitely tons of improvements that could be made because, every one of these object pages is an individual standalone static class, or I guess it's a class, but then some of the members are static methods, I guess I should say. And there's a lot of repeated code, things that could be shared. I have this anchor method. It appears in a few different object pages. I've got the anchor method here. Let me see. Do I have it? Where else? There's an anchor method in the create object page as well. So I think some of the stuff that's very similar could be factored out, But again, that's getting more into like the maybe library or like if there was a kind of a framework for this object pages style, that's kind of the design decisions that I think I'd be looking at. But right now, like I say, it's more of a demonstration of like I say, static types in the view code. So I'm just mentioning that to say, if you decide to browse through the code and you start to see stuff like that, I haven't really given much attention to how to lay out the framework side of this. But I'm sure some of you all, if anybody's interested in this and you do see you have some suggestions on how this could be structured, feel free to leave some comments. I guess you could leave them on my fork of the project. Let's see, is there anything else I want to talk about before I close? Yeah, okay, there is one last thing I wanted to mention before I close the video out. And that is, when you're dealing with a website, Razor pages or whatever, or just a website in general, if you've got a whole bunch of pages here, like in Razor pages, and in a way, they call each other, they link to each other, either through get or through post or whatever. So it's a network of pages, and it'd be nice to know, like, hey, if I'm on index, like, who refers to me, who calls me, and how do they call me, or how do they refer to me? Well, so we're looking at the index markup right here. Let's see here. You can see like here's a self-reference, right? So there's a form and it's referencing, the index page. But if we go to, let's say, the edit page, we can see here on the back to list link, right? It's referencing /index, but this is stringly typed. So, how do we find out everybody in the code base that calls index? Well, I mean, I guess you can grep for /index, but even that's not accurate because you could have other components are going to have, or other entities are going to have a, an index page. That's not quite accurate. So how do we do that in object pages? Okay, it's in C#, so we get it for free. We want to know. So right now we're on the student's index object page. So if we go to, like, let's say the anchor method, right? We can find out, who in the code base generated a link to us. Well, that's simple. You click on anchor, Shift F12, and you see a whole bunch of things did, right? The delete page did, the details page does, right? These are all the back to list links, right? But I mean, that's really nice. We can immediately tell, like, where, who's calling index in this way, right? Specifically to the anchor. Similarly, we can say, okay, who's calling the index page through a form, right? And we've got that here. In this case, it's just the one. It's the self-reference to the form on the index page. But what about this one? Who redirects to index? Well, there you go. Give me 1 second. Hang on. Let's do Shift F12 on redirect. Yeah. So these are the places in the project which redirect to index, right? Create post, and then a couple from edit. Let's see here. Okay, so anyways, yeah, I was just showing the references to the index redirect. So let me go back over here. So that's the last thing I wanted to show. Like I said, it's really easy to find out, within your within all your pages, how they call each other. Super easy. Like I said, you just get that for free since everything's in terms of these methods. Okay, I think that's the last thing I wanted to mention. So I will close the video there. It's kind of long. If you listen to the whole thing, wow. Yep, leave some comments. Let me know what you think. All right, thanks. Bye.